Greeting dear learners, I am Ankita Lakra from Department of Commerce. Welcome everyone to this comprehensive lecture on Unit 7 titled Public Finance Concepts, Principles and the Role of Government. Today, we are going to engage in a rigorous examination of how governments manage public resources, the framework of these actions, and the practical implication of economic policies on various sectors of a developing economy. Public finance is not merely about balancing books. It is the very lifeblood of state governance, determining how justice is served, how growth is fostered, and how stability is maintained in volatile times. In this session, we will cover the landscape of financial management from the theoretical frameworks established by Arthur Cecil Pigou to the ground realities of fiscal deficits and agricultural neglect in modern India. We will analyze statistical data regarding poverty, employment, and trade to understand the tangible outcomes of economic reforms. This lecture is designed to provide you with a deep, structural understanding of the mechanisms that drive public finance. Let us begin our exploration. Before we delve into the core content, it is essential to outline our roadmap. By the end of this lecture, you should be able to achieve the following learning objectives. First, you will be able to study the various strategies and tools adopted by the government to govern the economy effectively. Second, you will be able to study and categorize the objectives of economic policy, distinguishing between static efficiency and long term development. Third, you will understand the distinct categories of revenue generation and the fundamental principles that constitute a good tax structure. Fourth, you will learn the specific factors that influence changes in the structure of public expenditure. Fifth, we will study the severe consequences of physical crisis and physical deficits. Sixth, you will learn about the role of the International Monetary Fund, particularly regarding structural adjustments. Finally, you will understand the impact of economic reforms on critical indicators such as poverty, employment, investment, and foreign trade. Let us commence with the introduction of public finance. As a discipline, public finance deals with the financial management of public resources by the government. Its primary goal is to fulfill obligation and achieve socio-economic objectives. To understand this deeply, we must look to the work of the renowned British economist Arthur Cecil Pigou. In his classical volume, A Study in Public Finance, Pigou emphasized a critical concept, the role of government as a cohesive authority. Now, why do we use the word cohesive? It implies that in a developed society, the government holds the unique power to mandate resource collection primarily through taxes and to allocate these resources where they are most needed. Pigu's perspective frames the government not just as a participant in the economy but as the manager of public resources to ensure equitable distribution of wealth and economic stability. We can break down the concept of public finance into three main pillars. First, sources of public revenue. This includes taxation, both direct taxes like income tax and indirect taxes like sales tax. It also includes non tax revenue such as fees, fines, and income from public enterprises. Second, public expenditure. This covers spending on public goods like defense and education, as well as transfers payment like social welfare and pensions. Third, public debt. This involves government borrowings from domestic and foreign sources to finance deficits. Pigou and other scholars have identified guiding principles for financial management. These are the ethical and practical guardians for any government. The first principle is equity. This principle dictates that the tax burden must be distributed fairly among citizens based on their ability to pay. This is why we often see progressive taxation system where individuals with higher incomes contribute a larger share. The second principle is efficiency. This refers to allocating public resources in a way that maximize social welfare while minimizing waste. Governments utilize tools like cost benefit analysis to prioritize investment that yield the highest social returns. The third principle is transparency and accountability. This requires openness in financial transactions and ensure that public officials are held answerable for the management of public resources. Consider this verbal question. Can a government be efficient without being transparent? The answer is likely no, as lack of transparency often hides inefficiencies and corruption. The role of government here is threefold: revenue collection, levying taxes sustainably, resource allocation, providing public goods and addressing market failures, and redistribution and stabilization using fiscal policy to reduce inequality and manage economic fluctuations. Moving on, we examine economic policy. This refers to the strategies adopted by a government to manage the economy. We can categorize the objectives of economic policy into four themes. The first theme is static efficiency, which focuses on the short run. Static efficiency is about optimizing the allocation of resources right now. First, it involves the satisfaction of private consumption wants. The government encourages spending through tax incentives and ensures goods are available at competitive prices. Second, it involves the satisfaction of public wants. This means providing essential goods like healthcare and infrastructure that the private market might not supply efficiently. Third, it aims for balance of payment equilibrium. Governments use trade policies like tariffs to promote export and discourage excessive imports. Fourth is price stability. This is crucial. Through monetary and fiscal policies, the government aims to control inflation. Finally, it involves the removal of market imperfections. This means enforcing competition laws to prevent monopolies and encouraging innovation to enhance productivity. The second and third theme of economic policy move beyond simple efficiency into the realm of equity and identity. The second theme is social justice. This aims for increased employment through active labor market policies and private sector incentives. It seeks reduced interpersonal income inequalities. This is achieved through progressive taxation and redistributive social welfare programs. It also targets reduce inter-regional income inequalities. Governments must promote balanced regional development so that one part of the country does not lag behind another. The third theme is national cohesion. This focuses on fostering economic independence. The cohesion nation reduces dependence on foreign aid through domestic resources mobilization. It also involves the provision of economic symbols of nationhood. This includes promoting cultural industries, tourism, and iconic infrastructure projects that reflect national identity and pride. The fourth and final theme of economic policy is economic development. This is a long term objective aimed at structural transformation. To achieve this, policies focus on high savings. Governments encourage domestic savings through tax incentives and financial literacy programs. They also seek maximum capital inflows from the rest of the world. This involves creating a favorable investment climate to attract foreign direct investment. Crucially, development requires structural changes and modernization. This means diversifying the economy, perhaps moving from agriculture to industry and adopting advanced technologies. Finally, development often requires reduced population growth. Policies aimed at family planning and, importantly, female education and economic empowerment are vital to reducing fertility rates and enhancing human capital. Let us briefly recap what we have covered so far. We established that public finance is the management of public resources by the government acting as a cohesive authority as defined by PGU. We identified the three key principles of public finance: equity, efficiency, and transparency. We then categorized economic policy into four main themes: static efficiency for the short run, social justice for equity, national cohesion for unity, and economic development for long term growth. These pillars form the foundation of how a state interacts with its economy. Now, let us move on. How does the government actually fund these ambitious policy? We look at categories of revenue. There are three primary resources. First is taxes. These are split into direct taxes on income and wealth and indirect taxes like VAT and excise duties on goods and services. Second, charges for public goods. These are user fees like tolls and fines or penalties for non compliances with laws. Third, borrowings. When revenue falls short, governments borrow domestically via bonds or from foreign institutions like the World Bank. But simply collecting tax is not enough. The system must be designed well. What are the principles of a good tax structure? 1. It must ensure equitable distribution. It should be progressive. 2. It must minimize excessive tax burden. If taxes are too high, they discourage investment and economic activity. 3. It must reduce administrative and complaints costs. A complex tax system is expensive to run and hard to obey. Fourth, it must facilitate fiscal policy objectives, supporting stabilization and growth. Fifth, it must balance with other policies objectives, ensuring taxes do not harm environmental or social goals. We have discussed income, now we must discuss spending. This slide covers public expenditure. This plays a vital role in development. We measure the size of public expenditure not just in absolute numbers but relative to national income accounts. We look at the ratio of public expenditure to gross national product GNP. This indicates that government's total involvement in the economy. We compare it to the national income, which shows the proportion of national resources dedicated to government programs. We also compare it to personal income. This reflects how much government spending impact the actual income and living standard of individuals. Why is public expenditure rising worldwide? There are three main reasons. First, the demand for social justice. Governments are under pressure to address inequality through education and healthcare spending. Second, changing social structures. As societies evolves, we recognize that the market cannot provide everything, necessitating government spending on infrastructure and R&D. Third, political forces. Interest groups advocate for redistribution oriented programs like unemployment benefits. The structure of spending, meaning what we spend money on, changes over time. What influences these changes? First, the stage of economic development. Developing countries prioritize infrastructure and poverty reduction. Developed countries, however, often focus on social protection and maintaining living standards. Second, demographic factors. An aging population requires massive spending on pensions and healthcare. Conversely, a country with high youth unemployment needs to invest in training and labor market policies. Third, technological advancement. Rapid change demand expenditure on digital infrastructure and workforce upskilling to prevent the digital divide. Here is a question for reflection. If a country has a very young population but spends most of its budget on pensions, is its expenditure structure efficient? Likely not, as it ignores the demographic reality. Let us recap this session. We identified that governments generate revenue through taxes, users' charges, and borrowings. We defined a good tax structure as one that is equitable, minimizes burden, and is easy to administer. We then analyzed public expenditure, noting that it is measured relative to national income. Finally, we understood that public spending is increasing globally due to demands for social justice, demographic shifts, and the need for technological adaptation. We will continue Unit 7 in our next lecture. Till then, keep learning. Thank you.